Brendan Eyre, what's going on, man? You're very prompt. You're the first comedian I've had on this edition of the podcast, and the first one I booked was Louis J. Gomez, and he was booked for Saturday at 10 a.m. And I'm still waiting for him. So I appreciate the promptness.
He'll be there. He'll show
I'm going to start a podcast war with him. I think. I feel like that's how you kind of entice the rattlesnake, you know?
Yeah, that's how you get him. Yeah, that's a weird thing about comedy, and no one's on time, and it's a pet peeve of mine because I'm always on time,
Yeah.
and so like a lot of times, bookers will tell you a time for the show, working in the fact that comedians are always late. And so I'll get there at the time they told me and have to sit around for half an hour, and I'll be like, "No, this is ridiculous. Tell me the time it starts."
I do that naturally because I don't drive, obviously, so I have to like
Right.
Uber everywhere or
Sure.
whatever I have to do to get places. So I'm naturally like, I factor in
Right.
that the guy might be just an asshole driver or there's traffic or whatever. So
Right.
I'm everywhere an hour early, and I'm just sitting there like listening to a podcast, waiting for shit to start.
It's the life of responsible people like me and you that
It's miserable.
yeah, that we're stuck waiting places because of our consideration for others.
Um, so I asked you on alone this time because I had you guys on over the summer, the famous Rad Dude Cast with Greg Stone, Anthony DeVito, and yourself, and it was one of the most fun podcasts I've ever hosted because I didn't have to do anything.
Well, it was a shit show.
I just
You can
I
call it
just
what it was,
opened
Mike.
I just opened StreamYard and let Greg Stone make shit up for an hour and a half.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I've been
Um,
doing that for 8 years. So,
but it is wild, which we'll get into in a minute. But the reason I asked you on alone is because I know you deal with some you've dealt with some mental health issues and stuff like that, and I just kind of dealt with my own thing. So
mhm.
I thought it would be kind of interesting to get your perspective on some of that stuff and talk about it. But I don't know your exact story with that. I know you were institutionalized for a bit,
Yeah.
but I don't know exactly what you went through. So would you mind telling me a bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, I give you the as quick as I can the rundown. So I had my entire life I struggled with pretty bad anxiety from before I could remember. Like my mom has memories of me being like really really anxious about stuff that didn't really make sense that I don't even remember, and I hid it very well. I was a good athlete, I was a good student, I had a lot of friends. I kind of was able to hide that, and it didn't impede my life. And right around the time when I was 18, I also paired with that anxiety, I started to get depressed for no real reason. My life was good, I had um, I had a good family. I had good opportunities. My life was good. I just started to be really, really sad. That's around the time I really started abusing alcohol, mostly, and drugs to some degree, and that's sort of a separate deal, but it ties in a little bit.
Sure.
I got, I think, maybe when I was 22 or 21 or 23, somewhere around in there, I got on Lexapro, and it was what worked for me, kind of. And that paired with the fact that I got sober very young. Because I got pretty bad in my drinking and drugs. So I got sober when I was 23. Prior to that, I had gotten on Lexapro, and after that, my mental issues were like my anxiety and depression were like solidly in check, like really just very minor part of my life. Fast forward to 2016, 2017. I had a psychiatrist who was really concerned with the dose of Lexapro that I was on. It was a higher than the maximum dose. That's what it took to work for me. And at the time, and this was not at all this psychiatrist's fault, because at the time there were some studies that showed that could be a risk for heart stuff. Turns out that's not the case, but she suggested we switch to a different similar antidepressant, or SSRI is what that type of antidepressant is. And what happened, and what is so funny about the brain and depression and all of this stuff, is um, I went off the medication, and just during this whole time I had been on the medication, my depression and anxiety had, unbeknownst to me, gotten so much worse. And then no other medication worked. And then going back on the Lexapro didn't work, which is sort of common. And it's one of the weird things about mental illness, is that you can have a medication that works for you, and you can come off of it and you can go back on it, and it doesn't work the second time around. So it was this nightmare of, like, all of a sudden I was plunged. I was happy with my career in comedy. I was doing great. And I was plunged into this depression, deep depression, and like anxiety, like I had never experienced before. Just couldn't leave my apartment, just freaking out. It felt like almost constant panic attacks. And
Yeah.
uh, I, I didn't know what to do. I went home from New York for a while because I was feeling suicidal, and I just wasn't. I was living in a kind of one bedroom deal, and I can't. I was lucky enough to have a family to come home to in Cleveland, and I came home to kind of just have some people around me, and still couldn't figure it out. I attempted suicide. In June of 2017. I hung myself with a blanket um, in my parents' house, and the blanket sort of like wrenched out, it like wrenched. But I had tied the knot real good, So
Yeah.
I was just hung on, like, on my tiptoes, and so
Jesus.
I had to stand there for a while, and then
Goddamn
finally,
your Boy Scout training.
yeah, and then finally I had to just be like, "Mom."
Like fucking Frank Reynolds in Always
Yeah.
Sunny, just
Yeah.
swinging from the.
Yeah. Mom, I hung myself. And this is, I swear to God, Mike, this is true. She couldn't hear me. And she couldn't hear exactly what I was yelling. And she goes, "I'm on the phone." Be like, "All right, whenever you get a chance." So, she's a nurse. She takes me right to the ER, because she knows, like, okay, look, when someone's suicidal like that, they need to be. I didn't realize, like, this was gonna mean I was going to the psych ward, because I would have probably
Yeah.
not wanted to
And was
go.
that the first time you were anywhere near that close to being suicidal, or no?
Yeah, that was the first time I acted on it, and
Yeah.
that got me put in the psych ward, you know. And then from there, I was in the psych ward twice, and then I spent about 2.5 months, 3 months in a mental hospital. I eventually had electroconvulsive therapy, shock therapy, which um, anytime I tell people that, they're like, I didn't know they still did that. And
Yeah, I was curious because, especially on a show like the Rad Dude Cast, I don't know if you're joking. Like when I hear something like that, I'm like, ah, he's probably fucking around, because I didn't think that existed anymore.
no, and no one does, and I hope it does, because if it doesn't, I got pranked
You got a
real
bad,
bad.
you got a bad doctor.
Yeah, I got really pranked, man, because they did it to me 17 times. But yeah, no, it exists. And you know what? The truth of it is, it did not really work for me. But it is it is a really effective treatment. Like, the studies show, it's generally more effective than antidepressants. And so,
No.
just because it didn't work for me, I don't want to shit on it
Yeah,
publicly,
yeah,
because, like, basically what happened was, that One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, the movie, almost did away with that treatment, because it depicted it in such a way that people were like, we can't have that, and it's
Right.
like that wasn't very a bit. That may have been a realistic depiction like 70 years ago, but uh, um, uh, it's done in a very humane way now, and it works. It just didn't work for me, and then I basically just found a good doctor. I don't know if it was the finding this doctor that was really good, or time. Sometimes time passing helps, like mood disorder stuff, or just finally getting on the right meds. But whatever it is, it took that whole kind of saga was about a year and a half, and now and then I was good, man. Like I still deal with anxiety and depression. Probably something I always will deal with, but like,
Right.
so there's people dealing with stuff all the time. Like you deal with your eyesight, it's like it's something that is people deal with diabetes. They have to take a shot every day. It's like
Yeah,
that
yeah.
you just fucking deal with it. So it's not what it was. It's certainly not in crisis mode. I'm functional now. That's kind of the whole story. And I guess if the listeners are interested, officially in the mental hospital, I was officially diagnosed as having generalized anxiety disorder, panic disorder, medication resistant major depressive disorder, bipolar type 2, OCD, and borderline personality disorder. So they gave me six. They gave me six mental
Jesus.
illnesses. But that this doctor, who I eventually really I think helped me out. When he heard that, he kind of laughed because he's like an old school guy, and he was like, "You don't have six diseases. You're
Oh,
one.
okay.
You're one guy. You have one complex issue happening. Like they just need to tick all their boxes. Like
Because I was
it's
gonna say that's got to be more depressing to be like, hey, you got everything. Like you're
Yeah,
just
well, it's like six. Also, when I told my mom that, and she's a nurse, and she goes, "I never thought you had borderline personality disorder." And I go, "You just thought I had five the whole time? That's what you were just going on five my
yeah, no,
whole
the
life?"
rest of that seems right, but
Yeah,
that one.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
But
it's
yeah,
so there was nothing. You said your life was going good and everything when you started noticing it. Was that true kind of throughout, or did things happen that compounded that? Like with me, I have things that I can attribute it to. Like I generally do a lot of negative self self talk, they call it anyways.
sure, yeah,
And then on top of my eyesight getting worse and all that type of shit.
yeah.
But was there anything that kind of triggered it more for you?
I don't think. I mean, I really think in this case, it was the medication change. It
Yeah.
was, it was just, and no one was to blame for that. It was a weird thing. I mean, it's exactly what happened. It's exactly what happened to the author, David Foster Wallace. I don't know if you know who that is, but
Mhm.
he's like kind of he was the considered like the top young author of his generation, and he went off his meds, and he could never find something that worked or get back on the same meds again, and he committed suicide. Like it's just the brain is such a weird and not really understood even by the medical community, um thing, that the medicine, they're basically just guessing at shit,
Yeah.
and they're doing educated guess. But I will say, to answer your question, like once that happened, once stuff started going down that road, once I kind of had lost my mental health and was in this place of real deep depression and anxiety, things were getting worse because of my thoughts,
Yeah.
because being like, shit, I'm out of comedy. Am I ever gonna work again? I'm fucking living in my parents' attic. I'm 35 years old. Like I'm finished. I'll never be productive again. Like
Right.
all these thoughts that just build on themselves. Like what the hell is happening to me? I worked so hard to get to this point, and now I'm done, you know. But
Yeah, that was my thing where every little thing, like I was already in that state kind of, but then every little thing would would set me down a road of like, see, like it would validate all the negative thoughts I had.
sure,
Or like,
yeah,
see, I am a fucking loser, you know?
right, yeah, yeah. No, that's it's so, and it's so hard to just be like, I don't know. It's just when you're in that place, it's so hard to look at it from an outsider's perspective and like take a breath and be like, you know, it's gonna you're gonna work through this. You know, it's just when your brain is in that. I think it's hard for people to understand who don't deal with depression, that like when you're in that place, like positive thoughts, they're just not coming. You know,
Yeah.
they just won't, they won't occur, you know, as
Yeah.
much as you
And it's
want.
even hard to describe like when you are in a positive place because you're not thinking like that. And
Right.
it seems silly even to you, like when you're describing it, you know?
Right.
Like
Well,
you can
that's
say shit like, "Oh, I was depressed because of this," and it's like, "Well, that sounds silly now that I'm doing a little better," you know?
well, exactly. Well, that's the thing, because it's like sometimes people will be like, "Well, what were you depressed about?" And it's like, well, if it was truly about something, I would just say I was sad. You know,
Yeah, yeah,
depression is to me is like an irrational sadness that's like above and beyond what a normal fucking response to, like, you know, there's certainly, of course, there's many things in life you should be bummed out about, but like unable to get out of bed and you know, in the fetal position is not a normal response to anything really, you know,
yeah.
except being a baby.
The thing that kind of scared me, which goes to the medication thing you were talking about, where
Hmm.
I started medication in October, I think,
Yeah.
and I was on it for a while, and I was feeling good, and then they actually upped my dosage, and
Yeah.
I started that, and then I traveled for a couple days and forgot my medication,
Yeah.
so it was 2 days that I was off of it,
Yeah.
and I felt fine, but I had to get back on it, and it was a new dosage and everything.
Yeah.
Uh, and like it was like I felt all the side effects that did when I started,
Yeah.
and I started to feel really weird again and have mood swings and shit.
Hmm.
So it made me feel like, oh, if I'm ever off this, am I fucked now? So then that starts to depress you because you're like, I
Yeah.
can't live a normal life anymore.
Right. No, I know. And you know, this doctor that, that I eventually, uh, kind of, I think I really attribute him to helping me out, of the whole, you know, I said that to him. I was like, man, I don't want to be, I don't, I don't want to be a guy that like that's reliant on pills the rest of my life. You
Right.
know, that's uh and he basically was like, I don't give a shit. He was like, you know, he was like, you think a guy with diabetes wants to rely on insulin the rest of his life? You
Right.
know, you think you think a guy who requires a fucking colonoscopy bag wants to be relying on that the rest of his life? No, they
Yeah.
don't. Guess what? You're relying on pills. Deal with it. And I was like, all right, well, you know, I mean, and there's people that would disagree. There's people that would say like, you know, no, no, you can work through that shit. And it's like to them, I'm just, you know, because I've been pretty open about this, so I'll get messages about like, I, you know, you need to try more holistic approaches, and it's always like, man, you haven't been in my shoes. Like I've tried the
Right.
approaches. Like you know, I'm taking medicine and it works for me, and that's what I need to do. So
Yeah, I mean the accepting is a big thing. Not to sound too fucking corny, but accepting your lot in life is a big thing too. Because so the program I took a mental health leave for a few months at the end of the year,
yeah,
and I started a program for people losing their vision and going blind and all that type of shit. And when I went in there, like there were certain things I was always resistant to and would never do. And like using a cane and shit like that was one
right,
of them. And I was always like, I don't want people to judge me. And then it's funny because when you realize, like, I've never, like I've seen blind people on the train or whatever. And I've never thought, like, look at this piece of shit using a cane.
right.
But in your
No,
mind, that's how people think of you, you know?
yeah,
So
I could
it's similar with like
imagine.
medication or anything else.
Yeah. Well, and there's a weird thing for me where it's like, especially like hearing you talk, it's like there's a weird guilt when you have depression, like bad depression, and nothing to be depressed about. You know,
Oh, I
like
get that too. Whereas I'm like, when I was there, there's people that are, I'm not totally blind. There's people that are totally blind.
right.
And I'm like, well, what am I bitching about, you know?
Well, that's the thing. I'm sitting here like I'm telling Mike about my fucking sob story, and here's a guy who's working his ass off and losing his vision, you know. And it's like to me, you're inspirational, you know. And it's like I don't know. It's just it's a weird. And then you get depressed about that. You get
Yeah.
depressed that you feel
It's fucking
guilty
never
about
ending.
being
Yeah.
depressed. You know, it's like it's just it's a weird thing, man. And the brain is your human brain is so weird. And I honestly it's funny because I don't think I would trade my brain. I think like some of the things that like lead to my depression, like the fact that I sort of overanalyze everything and like everything really affects me deeply and I think about things all over and over and over again. Like they're not great things, but I think they help me be a good comic, you know?
Right.
So I think those traits that kind of fuck with me also help me to be a good comic because they're, you know, that's my comedy is kind of about like noticing things in the world that are absurd that people kind of take for granted as normal and so um yeah, it's weird. I wouldn't really trade my lot in life, just because you know I want to make it very clear as we're talking about this. I'm glad that I survived. I'm glad that my suicide attempt didn't work. And for anyone that is in that place or thinks of has those thoughts, um, I'm not going to tell you it's easy, but it does change. Those thoughts go away and slowly become better if you ask for help and
Right.
keep asking for help.
Well, there are moments that do pull you out of that too a little bit. Like I had, so over the summer, I called the suicide prevention hotline
Yeah,
because it was a situation where I was in therapy, but it was, I kind of just wanted to do it to see what it was like, more or less,
yeah, yeah,
because I was in that state and I just wanted to know, like, will this help me? And I called and I'm talking to the woman on the other end and I'm explaining, like, I'm losing my vision and all this type of shit. And she goes, "Oh, yeah, well, I really don't know what to tell you." And I was like, "You got to be shitting me, lady."
yeah. Well, I've heard I've heard stories where people call and they're just on hold for 45 minutes. It's like, are you fucking nuts? What's going on over there? Like, I'll man the phones if you need if you're shorthanded. Put out a fucking flyer or something. Um,
It's why I had to call back. Like
yeah,
I looked for someone else. I'm like, just tell me
yeah,
I'm not crazy. Like I'm not. I can't be the worst case you've ever dealt with.
yeah, yeah. Can you transfer me? Yeah,
Well, give me a top guy.
yeah. I don't know. Losing vision. I guess just do it then in that case. I've never heard that one before.
Yeah, you know, you
It's
put up a good argument. You probably
yeah,
should just kill yourself.
yeah, 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 yeah. That's weird, man.
What was the what was the mental institution like? Because I know a lot of people have their images. I'm sure I judge it
Uh
inaccurately as well. So I'm curious what that
so
experience was like.
um so I've been in the psych ward twice. The psych ward is pretty intense and not great. But I will say it's where I needed to be because the psych ward basically is just they're just not going to let you kill yourself. You know, like that's
Right.
kind of their a number one goal. But the psych ward is wild because they often don't. You know, you go to the ER, and if you express that you were, and I had no idea about this, but uh, I think it's a good thing. But if you express that you are going to harm yourself, they have the right to just put you in the psych ward involuntarily, which
Hmm.
I didn't know, and I was arguing with them about it, and they were like, okay, I mean that we can get police officers here to take you, or you can get in the ambulance, but the psych ward can be a little rough because they don't really, at least where I was, they didn't really have the resources to separate, like people like you and I who have these mood disorders from people who are like, you know, uh, just deeply schizophrenic, or
Yeah.
people who are nonverbal, whatever they might have. Like, it's just a mix of everyone, and it's small, and you're locked in. Um, and it's pretty intense. But for what I needed at the time, which was to be in a place where someone was there to make sure I didn't kill myself, it was they did the job,
Yeah.
and the mental hospital was a little different because it was like I wasn't getting better. I wasn't getting better. I didn't know what the fuck was going on. And with my mom, we kind of found a place that my insurance would help with a little bit, and that was like a good place. And so the mental hospital was different. You had a little more freedom. They had like a gym. The food was a little better. It was bigger, and it was separate. Like my ward, or where I was, my like place, my
Yeah.
wing, or whatever you call it, was all people that were sort of, not, of course, a variety of different um uh problems, but they were all mood disorders. It was all kind of like, people you could talk to, and it was not,
That's
because
what I was
they
going to ask, if you found people you could kind of relate to, because I think the vision is the vision that people have of uh, uh, any sort of mental institution is basically just cuckoo's nest, like you said, where it's like
yeah, no,
everyone
and
you meet is like, I think I'm a carrot, or like they
yeah,
just fucking nuts. Whereas that's I'm sure not the case.
no, 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 it wasn't at all. It was like, well, and my problem was I never like got crazy. Like, I was always able to talk, and carry on a civilized conversation. Like, I had two doctors who didn't know each other and weren't at the same facility. One doctor told me I was the sanest crazy person he'd ever met, and the other doctor told me that I was the craziest sane person he'd ever met.
A couple nice feathers in your cap.
Yeah. So I guess I presented. I was so used to like covering up my anxiety that I could present as so normal until you started asking me about what was going on in my brain, and
Yeah.
then it was like, oh fuck, you're fucked up, man. Uh, but yeah, I connected. I mean, I had good friends in there. I still keep in touch with a buddy from there. I was in there for so long because they just couldn't make me better, that I ended up being like kind of like the top guy. Like, there was like a good chair in the TV room, and like that it was like this kind of like reclining leather chair, and that was like sort of known, like that's my chair. And then about a month before I left, and I obviously cannot share this gentleman's name, but a current NFL player came,
Oh wow.
and immediately it was his chair. And I was so mad because I was like, I'm the top guy. You guys are giving him the chair right off the bat. But it was cool because it was so cool because I mean, talk about a surreal experience. I'm in the mental hospital. It was the fall, and I'm watching football games with an NFL player, and he's like breaking down plays for me and shit, and like telling me all this stuff about the NFL. That's
Yeah.
crazy. And like,
Or you were just envisioning that and it never really happened.
yeah, it could have been a guy. He just could have been a liar.
Yeah.
No, no,
Yeah, that too.
no. It was funny because a lot of the people in there weren't sports people,
Right.
but I knew who he was right away. And he didn't come out and just announce what he was, but I knew who he was. And
Yeah.
and also, like, if you're a sports guy, like, you know, you know, if someone's a certain height and build that they've at least done something,
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
they're not a fucking accountant, but
Yeah,
I knew him by face. But even if I didn't, I would have been like, this guy must have played college ball or something. Like,
something. Yeah, yeah,
yeah, he's too ripped up and tall to be a like a but no, I knew who he was, and we became kind of friends, and it was so funny because he'd have like just crazy backstory. Like we'd be watching the NFL and he'd be like, "You see that guy? He ate a mouse on a dare one time."
yeah.
Fuck, Jesus Christ! I think he should be in here.
Yeah, that's gotta be pretty crazy to find someone that like you're in there for this, to kind of cleanse yourself, and you have this guy that you just want to talk about the NFL with.
Yeah, I mean, it was great because it was like you go to your appointments, you have all these appointments and programs and shit, and but then there's also downtime. It's a little bit, I suppose, like a way, way, way nicer, safer version of prison. Where
Yeah.
I think you are looking for ways to kill time, and it's like to have this guy in there who does something that I'm a big fan of. It was pretty neat, and I wasn't like. I respected that he was in there to get some shit taken care of. So I wasn't like, you know, on him all the time about it, but if he was in the mood to be talking about it, I was super interested.
Yeah. I think you were when you were referring to being the sanest crazy person, I thought of I think Anthony DeVito had the best line to describe your role on the Rad Dude
Yeah.
Cast, where he said our straight man has been institutionalized.
Yeah.
And which is very true, because if you listen to that podcast, you're like, oh, Brendan must be losing his mind with these two maniacs.
Right.
But does that, being the kind of personality you are, where you seem, like a very normal, analytical guy, does that cause people to kind of judge you when you are depressed? In this, like, we're lucky enough that we live in an era where I think people understand depression a lot more. But do you
Yeah.
find people are thinking like, he's just being a baby because you seem relatively normal?
Yeah. Well, I think it's more like it can be more frustrating because it's like when I am depressed, people don't see it. It's my loved ones that see it. My girl and my family, and I've really done work on like making sure I don't take it out on them.
Yeah.
Like because used to be my mo. Like take it out on the people I know can't
Mm-hmm.
disown me.
Yeah, I do the same thing.
And that's just not right. And I did a lot of work on like learning how to be like, hey, I'm really mad right now. I don't know why. It's because something's wrong with my brain. It's not at you. I'm gonna go, you know, I'm gonna go be by myself for a little bit, or I'm gonna go on a run, or I'm gonna, just trying to put into words. And it doesn't work every time, but just trying to be like trying to share when I feel like that rather than just keep it in and then fucking yell at someone.
Yeah.
But in terms of the public, I get upset sometimes because I'm like, nobody can see that I'm dealing with the disease,
Right.
like, and so nobody knows that. Like, and I talk about it on stage, so people sometimes know it, and I'm pretty open about it if I'm asked. But it's like, it is frustrating when you're like, man, this has been fucking hard for me, man, really hard, and nobody kind of knows that, and it's a little bit, I don't know. It's almost like this gross thing of like in times of darkness you get jealous of like, look at that, everyone is feeling sorry for that guy because he had minor cancer, but I don't get any like
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
recognition. And it's like, what a shitty thought that is.
Yeah. Yeah,
But
but you do want that in some way, where sometimes like depression is almost comforting because it means you don't have to, you can be depressed for that moment rather than like trying to get out of it?
right, right,
It's
right.
easier to lay into it.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah. But
what you're sober now. Are you a guy like, sometimes you see guys that got sober very young? especially in comedy. Like when I think of like Jim Norton or Bobby Kelly
Yeah.
that quit very young, um, it's not even a thought for them really. I mean, a guy. I'm on the Kirk Minahan show from time to time, and he's sober, and
Right.
he says he doesn't even really think about it, which I'm always impressed with. Is that kind of how you are, or is it something you
Yeah.
still struggle with?
No, I don't even really think about it, man. I don't I'm grateful for it from time to time when I see someone who's uh struggling with it. It does remind me like um it gives me some empathy towards them. You're just remembering where I was and how bad things got so early for me. And I would say the only thing that occasionally pops up, and I'm very easy to kind of get over it for me. But occasionally, the only thing I'll miss is like on a nice spring or summer day, I'll be like, I'd like to smoke a joint in the park.
Yeah, yeah,
Like
yeah,
that's the one thing. Alcohol, I don't miss. Hard drugs, I don't miss. That I miss. And I do have people in my life, and they're usually people that don't really know me, who'll be like, hey, you could probably just smoke weed, right? And it's
yeah.
like, I mean, maybe, but I don't want to fucking take the risk,
Let's roll
like,
the dice.
yeah, yeah. Why would I, my life is good now. Why would I be like, because I do know people that are successfully quit alcohol, quit hard drugs, and still smoke weed.
Right.
I do know people like that, but it's like, yeah, I'm not taking that chance because knowing myself, it's going to be smoke a joint, go get 30 beers, try and find a new cocaine dealer.
Yeah.
Like I know my MO, so I'm not interested in even going down that path.
That's why I'm always amazed at the amount of comedians that are able to get sober considering you're in a bar every night. Like that would be my thing where like if I'm at a party and not drinking, by the end of the night it's just obnoxious to be around these drunk assholes. So you feel like you kind of have to drink. So I'm amazed at the amount of people that are able to push that aside and actually not only that but enjoy themselves when they're around people who are drinking.
Yeah, well, it amazes me because I got sober before comedy. So it amazes me before I did comedy, so
Mhm.
not before
Before
comedy
it existed.
existed. Yeah. um so I'm always amazed at guys that get sober after they've started because A, what you just said, and then B, I feel like I would somehow feel reliant on that beer or two before I go up on stage, the idea that they break away from that is so impressive to me. So yeah, I think on a couple different fronts it's amazing. For me, I started a little late. So I got sober when I was 23 and I started comedy when I was 28. So it was
Oh wow.
never really an issue for me. I do think in some ways it's held me back a little bit just because, there's part of the networking in comedy is just hanging around at bars where comedy shows happen and at comedy clubs, and like I don't really fuck around with that too much. Like I don't like it. It's boring for me, like I just to be at a bar is just I don't like it. So like
Yeah.
I'll hang around for a bit and then go. And I do think in some ways that's held me back a little bit, but it is what it is.
Yeah, I notice just as far as like having shit to talk about, I'm very I don't know, antisocial's probably not the right word, but definitely introverted.
Yeah,
Whereas I don't like going out. I don't like being in big crowds. I don't like being in places I'm not familiar with really. And I'm starting to notice, and now with the pandemic on top of that,
right.
I'm noticing like I feel like I'm not having as many experiences as I need to talk for a living.
Yeah, I mean we've been doing 4 Rad Dude Casts a week since March, and we're kind of dealing with that where we're like it's really been an exercise in like s- you know stretching our comedic range because
Yeah.
we're not fucking going outside. What are we going to talk about,
I
but
think the last episode I listened to at the end, Greg was in an argument with someone on like some message board or something,
Oh, sure. Yeah,
and he
yeah.
was waiting for a response, and one of you was like, "Well, let's save that for the next episode."
Yeah, let's keep some riveting content in the tank.
Let's not spoil it all here. Yeah,
Greg's action figure message board fight. We don't want to give out all the good stuff at once. Yeah, but no, it's and surprisingly the podcast has grown during the pandemic, so I guess they're not sick of hearing from us four times a
yeah.
week, but yeah, it's I don't know, man. How are you doing now? Like in terms of your mental health,
A lot better for now. Like
yeah,
I'm always waiting for the other shoe to drop, I guess. But um, ba- based on the medication that I'm on and the therapy that I've done, and just changing kind of the way I approach shit and think about shit, I'm doing a lot better. But like you were saying, my fear is that in a month I'm not just out of nowhere, and like how
yeah,
I'm gonna handle that. You know?
yeah. Well, you'll just handle it because
Yeah.
I mean that is the I think that's the fear we live with is like and it's hard to explain to people that haven't been there, but like I have anxiety about anxiety. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm scared it's going to come back in the way it was, and it's hard to explain that to people. But one thing that's interesting is so when you took some leave, were you really going through like a crisis? Was that kind of what was happening?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't get to the point where I was going to attempt suicide, I don't think, but I was
Yeah,
thinking about it a lot. And then I kind of realized in some form I was thinking about it, every day since I
right.
was 15 years old.
Sure. Yeah.
And that kind of started as like, I would joke about, "Oh, I'll just kill myself."
Right. Right.
With your buddies or whatever,
Right.
and that became like that was my go-to solution. Like, oh, I really could just kill myself if things go wrong, and
Yeah.
then that kind of developed into every day I'm thinking I should kill myself,
Right.
and that wasn't. It didn't feel odd to me because I never thought of myself as suicidal
Right.
until I would kind of hear people say like, yeah, I was just, I was thinking about killing myself all the time. And I'm like, oh, that's not what suicidal is. You have to put
Yeah.
a gun in your mouth to be
No.
suicidal. But then I
No.
realized, no, 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 I'm thinking about killing myself all the
Yeah.
fucking time. Maybe I
Yeah.
should do something about that?
Right. And that's why, man, nothing makes me angrier than the idea of suicide as a cowardly act or as the easy
Right.
way out or selfish because people focus on the act. They never focus on what in almost every case is the situation, and that's what you've been through is years of courageously fighting it. You know what I mean? They never talk about that for years those thoughts have been in that person's mind,
Right.
and they've fought them, and they've not acted on them, and they've done what they can not to do it. And so I just think that's amazing that you have those thoughts, and you had those thoughts, and you did something about it. And it's like I get so mad when people say like, that guy took the coward's way out, and it's like, you don't know him. That guy could have been living in fucking agony for 25 years,
Yeah.
fighting it, and so it's just I don't know. I would tell you this, the one thing that I got a lot of comfort out of, this doc I was telling you about, who really helped me out. He was just super old school. He was Freudian trained, which is like nobody does that anymore. New doctors laugh at that. They
Yeah.
think it's outdated. But and he was a big um he was very knowledgeable on like the history of mental health. And the one thing that he told me is that like when you have kind of a major episode, whether that be, in my case, a bit of a break from reality, like because I was having some delusions, but or in your case, like did this period of suicidality that caused you to take a leave from work and sort stuff out. What he was saying that really comforted me was he told me historically those kind of things, it's probably going to come back. And he said, but it's going to come back not as severe as the first episode. And that really comforted me, that it was like, oh, so I guess, in the people that study these things, oftentimes these episodes will come back, but they come back, the first real big downfall is the greatest. Like the next time they come back, it won't be quite as bad, And
Yeah.
so that comforted me to know, okay, I got through the fucked up one. Like if it does come back, historically, by the odds, it's going to be not as bad, and that was kind of good to know. So I don't know. I got I got high hopes for both of us.
We'll pull out of this.
Yeah. Yeah, and
We're
I
not
would
even talking into microphones. This is just a support group that we didn't realize we were in.
Yeah. Well, no, but it's important. Like, man, fuck, don't kill yourself.
Right.
Like, yeah, we are talking to people who are listening, but I right now I'm talking to you. You are funny and good, and you know a bunch of shit. And like, yeah, fuck, man, stuff sucks sometimes, but like, trust me, it's good you're around. Like,
Yeah.
don't kill yourself. And I like it when people tell me that too. So I'm
Thank
telling
you.
you that.
You're actually the first person that said that.
Yeah, well,
I
yeah,
told my parents I was suicidal. They were like, "Oh, all right, go for it.
yeah, yeah,
Just
yeah,
finally finish something for once in your
yeah,
life, you know?"
yeah. I'm working on a joke. I haven't really written out yet. I just kind of saw this thing on TV that made me think about it. But the world record for the highest the high dive
Hmm.
is like 182 feet. Um, but this guy attempted suicide off the Golden Gate Bridge and lived. And if you ask me, 225 feet is 225 feet. Doesn't matter what you were trying to get done. It, give that guy the record.
I like
Right?
it.
Shouldn't he have the record? That's bullshit.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's bullshit. Who cares? It doesn't matter if you're trying to break the record. He broke the record.
That's got to be like you were saying when people call it a cowardly act. Like, in what world is it cowardly to jump off the Golden Gate Bridge?
That's the thing. When you're like, "Oh, it's a cowardly act," I want it. I don't. You don't want to say this because you don't want anyone to do it, but I want to be like, hey man, go back to where I was. Stand on a chair with a fucking knot around your neck and make the decision to jump
Yeah,
off. Like, and tell me that and tell me that's cowardly because it was
yeah.
scary as shit.
I've always said I don't have the guts for suicide. Like my
Yeah.
my biggest fear with that shit is like, what if I live, but I'm just fucked up? Like there was a
Sure.
time when
Yeah.
anytime I would take the train here in Boston, when it would be if it would zoom into the stop, I'm like, well, I could just jump now, and that would probably kill me. But
Right.
then you hear of people that like live after
Live.
that,
Sure.
and I'm
Yeah.
like, well, that's for the
Yeah.
birds. You know, that's
Yeah.
no way to that's
Yeah.
no way to
But you
live.
you could become a hell of a motivational speaker. You got a
Yeah.
career in it after that. Uh,
um, on a I don't know if you'd call this a lighter note, but you have one of my favorite fight stories that I was hoping you would tell. I don't know how to ask you to tell it without spoiling it.
oh, the when I was still doing drugs.
Yes.
Oh God. Yeah. This was a low point, and this was one of those ones where I could never apologize to this person because I don't know where they are. But if you're listening, this is you. I'm sorry, but a guy ripped me off on a drug deal when I was, I don't know, 21 or something, 20. He sold me fake cocaine, and I saw him. I saw him about a week later, and it was winter time, and I beat the shit out of him, and and he didn't have any money on him. It was a fair amount of money he ripped me off of, and he didn't have any money on him, so I stole his coat. It was like a nice North Face coat. I stole his coat, and I left him with a bloody nose, kind of leaning against the wall in winter. And like 3 blocks later, I saw the actual guy that sold me the fake Coke. It was the fucking wrong guy. I beat up the wrong guy and I ran back to try and give him his coat and he was gone. So I just beat up a guy saying, "Don't ever fucking sell me fake Coke." And he was denying it and I was like, "Don't fucking deny it." And it's like, no,
That's what I was gonna
he
ask. Is
he
was
was
there no
right.
point where he's like, I don't know what the fuck you're talking
The
about, man?
whole time he was. The whole and I was like, "Don't fucking lie to me." To be fair, they did look. They were dead ringers, like all virtually indistinguishable. But that was, I mean, that was, I was. It was funny. Like, man, I still had the same morals and ethics that I grew up with and that I have now. But like when you're an alcoholic and a drug user, it becomes so easy to ignore those morals, to
Yeah,
start to living. I mean, I was living like a scumbag, I was a piece of shit.
yeah.
And I'm grateful that I got sober so young and didn't have to run because the truth is I fought a lot when I was drinking and doing drugs and usually I lost. That was
Right.
a that was that was a outlier. That victory, which was not a victory.
Well, when the opponent has no idea who you are
Yeah, yeah,
or
yeah,
why
yeah.
you're there.
Yeah, no idea what's happened. Just a random attack from a crazy lunatic. But
Now,
yeah,
did you just go? Did you go up to the real guy and hand him the coat and just say, "This is you. You rightfully own this now."
no,
You've avoided.
and I felt so guilty about beating up a fake guy that I didn't even confront the real guy. I was just like, you can't just beat up.
Yeah, you missed your
You know,
chance at that
this is
point.
double jeopardy. You know what I
Right.
mean?
The guy got off.
A
Yeah.
man's already been convicted of this crime.
And I wonder what that guy how that guy tells that story. Like I was just
Yeah.
walking down the street and the guy just said, "You sold me fake Coke," and started beating me about the face.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I know. I'll be honest, and this is judgmental, and I don't know. And look, I was a piece of shit at the time too, but like the area where he was, and like the looks of him, and like where he was sort of scrounging around about, like I don't think he was up to anything good either.
Oh, all
Uh,
right. Well, then
but but
you're sort of a vigilante.
that doesn't excuse my behavior. I'm just saying he was sort of just hanging out on a rough street corner
Yeah.
at a in the middle of the night.
Yeah, you're
I don't know
taking
what
matters into your own
I
hands. I
don't know what
understand.
I'm trying to do here. There's no excuse.
You're cleaning up the streets.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah.
like I was at Fenway Park here in Boston. There's some homeless guy comes up to me and he mutters nonsense. And I go, "What's that?" And he mutters nonsense again. I go, "Oh, okay."
Yeah,
And just to kind of get him away from me, and he
yeah,
walks away.
yeah.
And one of the hot dog vendors outside Fenway comes up to me, and he goes, "You know that guy's sort of a hero around here." And I said, what are you talking about?" He goes, "Well, that's the Fenway Stomper." And I was like, "What? Do tell."
Yeah, yeah,
He
yeah, yeah.
says he's a homeless guy who kills other homeless guys by stomping them to death. And I said, "You consider this man a hero?" He's like, "Well,
Yeah.
he's cleaning up the streets."
He's a superhero, the
Yeah,
Fenway Stomper.
yeah. So I'm
What
saying
is
that's
he?
kind of what you're like
Yeah,
in a way.
what does he stomp out crime? Nope, just guys that are down on their luck. Kills them.
Just getting him out of the streets.
Yeah, wow. Oh, geez.
Also, I should apologize. This is how in my own head I am. This kind of goes to the mental health thing we're talking about. Where during this conversation, I've realized I have sort of a crutch where while you talk, I feel the need to say like yeah or right, and then in that story you go, I was a real scumbag, and I go yeah right.
No, it's
And
fine.
I
I
realize it
was.
sounds like
Yeah,
I'm like
yeah.
yes
No,
you
no,
are
no.
yes
No, I
indeed.
was. No, 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 no. I was. That's totally fine. Yeah. But yeah, man, I think like one thing I would say to you is like I found through like a year, and it seems like you're doing it. But it took me like a year and a half to really realize like I have to advocate really hard for myself. Like even though doctors and therapists and all these people, they're there for you. Like you really have to spell it out to them. If you're like, if you're like, if you're not happy, if you're not happy with where you're at, you gotta tell them. You gotta be like, hey, this medicine made things a little better. I still having suicidal thoughts or whatever it is, it's like you have to and anyone listening, like you have to add, because I was so afraid to advocate for myself because I had this trust in the medical field that like they'll deal with it. They know what to do. I don't know what to do. They'll tell me, I was very insecure around these people because I just felt so guilty about, oh, I don't, why do I have the right to be sad when there's people starving in the world or whatever. And so I was afraid to like really advocate for like, no man, I need this fucking fixed. Like we need to do whatever we got to do, switch medicines, do all this shit, like whatever it is, let's get this fixed. And like I just, if I could say anything to people that are dealing with mental health issues, like don't give up. There's so many fucking options. Medication, therapy, between those two things and different types of therapy, there's nearly infinite options. And it's like just don't give up till you feel a way you are okay with feeling. Like it's pretty important, I think.
Yeah, well, that I mean that another thing with me is like the sort of defeatist attitude that I had, where I was so negative about myself all the time,
Hmm.
and then when if people were negative towards me, or like said I couldn't do something, I'd be like, yeah, they're right. So that would validate my negative thoughts. So I'd
Yeah.
be like, ah, they're right. So it kind of manifested itself into me not trying.
Right.
Whereas now that's where you say like kind of be your own advocate. That's another thing too, is like try at least try to prove yourself and other people wrong, because otherwise you're just not doing it. You're just giving up immediately before you even start.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like one thing, it's also like take stock of your positives. It's like you're going blind. I cannot relate to that. That that is a must be a brutal, just difficult, a horrendous situation for you. But you're also, a great media personality. You're a good looking guy. You have a cool fucking chain,
Ooh.
like you always wear a good hat. Like you got stuff going for you.
I
You
was
know
like,
what
oh
I
no,
mean?
the
Like
chain's not out, is it?
I see it. I see it in the corner, and I'm mad because it's bigger than my chain. That's the problem. I see
All
it
right.
behind your collar. I'm fucking pissed at you because you got a bigger chain. But yeah, I mean, it's like because I kind of learned to like take stock sometimes at night. Like for a while, my psychiatrist had me doing it every night. Like like just every night saying out loud to myself what's good in my life. Like because I was so down on it. And like man, you got good stuff in your life, and it's like I cannot imagine the what you're going through with the vision, but
Yeah.
at the same time, man, is it fucking admirable that you're
Oh, thank you. It's
that
too
you're
kind.
well, no, it is. No, it's not too kind. It's something more people should be telling more people. Like that's fucking takes balls and courage to go through the world, dealing with something like that. And you should know that,
Well,
like
thank you.
it really does.
I have a few more questions for you, but we've done an hour. I don't want to take too much of your
I
time. Do
got
you have a
I
little
got
while?
nowhere to be. I got
All right,
nowhere.
cool.
My girl is we're 38 weeks and 4 days pregnant, so I'm on
Funny,
leave
funny you say that. That
from.
was my next question.
Yeah, yeah.
I was gonna say, not only are you dealing with the pandemic, but you're gonna be a dad. You're dealing with a girl who's pregnant.
Yeah.
Is that how's that been for you?
Well, I'll be honest, like man, it's been pretty awesome because like obviously in um terms of work, in terms of the world at large, it's been a rough year. So the fact that I have a baby to look forward to, I'm gonna be a dad is like this amazing um just this amazing good thing happening during a lot of bad things. And I also feel very, very, very grateful that, um, I know so many of my friends that are struggling, and I just happen to, my album gets played a fair amount on Sirius, so been still making decent decent money,
What's it
which
called?
it's called Desiree. And you can get it wherever, but it doesn't really matter because I only the only place that pays decently anymore is satellite radio.
Oh well, fuck.
But
Go listen on Sirius, folks.
yeah, yeah, just call Sirius and tell them you want it more. But yeah, so I've been lucky in that respect that that losing out on road work hasn't forced me to go go find a different line of work, which I'd willingly do to support my family, but I
Yeah,
don't have to, luckily. But yeah, the baby thing has been I feel like almost better that it's during a quarantine, because it's like I can be there for her,
right.
and I'll be there. I'm going back out on the road starting in February a little bit, depending on how the pandemic goes. But
Mhm.
I'll be there with the baby for the whole first month and everything. So, yeah, man, I'm super excited. And the crazy thing is, like, it's just crazy to think, like, June 2017. I truly believed I didn't want to die when I attempted suicide. I didn't want to die. I wanted the pain to stop. I wanted the panic that I was in to stop. I
Yeah, you
needed it.
wanted to not be alive, but you
Yeah,
didn't want to die.
exactly,
Yeah,
exactly. I didn't want to die, but I wanted to not be alive, and I saw no possibility, zero possibility of a future as a functioning human being in society. I truly believed that, and and here I am, you know, less than 4 years later, um, happy, healthy, doing well financially, with an amazing woman and a baby on the way. So it's just
yeah,
like, man, if you're in that fucking spot, God, I feel for you, because I've been there. I've been there twice, actually. Um, I've attempted twice. That one was just a more kind of close call, but I've been there. So I'm telling you, it 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 can change. It does change. So yeah, I'm pumped for this baby. I'm gonna try and teach it a lot of tricks. See what you can do with a baby.
Feed it. Have it
Yeah,
roll over
no,
and
she'll be
sit.
on top of that. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I'll give it treats. Yeah, whatever.
Was that planned or kind of a surprise?
No, it was like it was like a half a plan. It was
Yeah,
like
you
a
weren't trying to prevent it, basically.
exactly. Yeah,
Yeah,
it was the pull the goalie, see what happens.
yeah,
That kind of. But she seemed to think it was more of a, like, we'll see what happens, and I was like, I know what's going to happen. You're going to get pregnant. That's what happens when you do
right.
that. But we both have always wanted to be parents, and so we're pretty stoked.
Did you have any worry of? I actually talked to someone about this specifically about a week ago, but it's something I worry about a lot with because now I'm 29 now, so I'm kind of getting to the age where I'm at least starting to think about that type of stuff.
Yeah,
Um, but I'm like, I mean, I'm blind. It's a hereditary thing, my eye condition,
sure,
and depression kind of runs in my family. I'm like, I don't
sure.
want to pass these shit genes on to make someone else live through them. Did that type of stuff run through your mind at all, or
Yeah,
no?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, for
How do you deal
sure.
with that?
Um, I think I deal with that by, realizing that, like, these things that I've dealt with, if I take my life in totality, I love it.
Right.
So it's like, so if this kid happens to have depression or anxiety or mental illness issues, um, I'd rather there be a kid out there with that, who has a dad that can help guide them through it, than not. You know, it's
Right.
like I'm just not going to not have a kid based on those fears, and
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, neither my brother nor my sister have any serious mental problems, so it's like, it's something that it's like, I think when if you start worrying too much about that sort of stuff, it's like almost everyone in the world has something running in their family
Yeah.
that could prevent them from having kids, and it's like, you can't really let that affect what you want out of your
Yeah.
life.
Well, that's kind of what they told me. I was asking, I was like, what if, what if the kid puts something in their mouth and I don't see it? Or what if the kid hurts themselves or whatever? And they're like, well, you realize that like sighted parents have that concern too. Like that's not unique to you.
Sure. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
something that everyone
Absolutely.
worries. Like it's going to be tougher for me, but it's
Yeah.
something that everyone kind of worries about. So it shouldn't, I mean, it's something a reason I should maybe consider adoption or something like that. But it's not something that should cripple me as a as a human being.
Yeah. Not at all. And like, I mean, there's 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 parents that are both blind and raise great kids, like,
Right.
there's no, you'll figure it out. I think you got to trust that, like, if that's something you want, you'll figure it out. You're a
Yeah.
smart guy. You know what I mean? You'll figure out how to do it. And you'll talk to other people who have done it, and they'll tell you how to do it.
Right.
It's not you don't seem to have, I don't know you very well, but you don't seem to have let uh uh your condition stop you from doing too much. So I just wouldn't worry about it, man.
Yeah. Do you think do you think comedy's gonna be coming back anytime soon?
Oh
I feel
yeah.
like everyone's kind of saying we're right around the corner. Like once summer comes, we're gonna be starting to get back to normal. But I don't know. The more like in Massachusetts now, even while you're sitting down for a meal, you have to have a mask on until your food comes or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be weird for a while, but I do think it's slowly going to come back, and it is back in a lot of places. I
Right.
don't, I don't know whether it's the most responsible thing that it's back, but at the same time, man, I can't blame these club owners. They're trying not to go out of fucking business, and they're doing their best to do social distancing and masks and all that. And it's
Yeah.
like, to me, the government should be giving them more help. If they want them to be closed, then give them some fucking help, because they're open literally to to avoid closing permanently. So, every club I've worked since the pandemic, with the exception of one, has been really responsible in terms of social distancing, mask wearing, all of that stuff. Look, it's probably, if I had to, in a perfect world, there probably wouldn't be comedy clubs open right now. But the truth is, there needs to be some balance between safety and people's mental health. You can't just be fully locked inside, worried about our government imploding, you know, 24/7, 365 days a year. Like, it's people are going to lose it if that
No, yeah.
happens.
I mean, eventually people have to get back to running their businesses, or
Right,
working,
right,
whatever. And
right,
and they're doing it very weird. Like I was kind of, when I got the first stimulus check, I was employed at the time, and like I didn't make a lot of money, but
right,
it was no different than any other time of year where I was making money.
right,
And so I was kind of like, why am I getting this? Like give
right,
the money that's going to people that maintain their jobs
right.
to business owners that are suffering or whatever. The way they're doing it doesn't make any fucking sense.
No, I don't I don't think it's been handled well. It's a little concerning. I kind of hope the whole vaccine rollout gets ramped up big time within the next couple of months, because it's clearly not happening at any kind of good pace. But
What's are you living in the city in New York City?
no, 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 no. So what happened was, uh, I was never going to be a full time, a lifelong New York guy. It's just, I never loved the city. I kind of like you were saying, I get nervous in big crowds. I don't like them.
Mhm.
And so the city was always for me a place where I could get up on stage and hone my craft as a comic, and I was always planning on leaving. And I probably would have stayed another year, but at the end of July, my girlfriend and our lease was up, and between all of the clubs in New York being closed and most of my road work during the year is closer to the Midwest anyway, and the fact that we wanted to be around family with the baby coming, we moved to Cleveland, where I'm from. So I'm in Cleveland.
Oh,
Um,
are you
and
really? Because the podcast doesn't sound like you guys are remote.
no, we've done a pretty good job. We with the Mike Suarez, our new producer, has really helped us out with the audio. We're feeling pretty good about where that's at. It's going to be interesting to think, and I don't know when this will happen. The thing we're all a little concerned about, and we'll work it out, is when things change and Greg and Anthony are in studio and I'm still remote. That might be a bit weird,
Yeah.
but we'll figure it out. This is just, it's just like, you know, I, 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 we lived in not a great neighborhood in Brooklyn, and it's like, uh, I, we pay like $500 less in rent for triple the space. We have a
Right.
yard, a garage, like just a great neighborhood. It's just, it's so funny the difference in what you can get. And we're right, we're 5 minutes from my parents, and I always kind of wanted to come back to Cleveland. So I a lot of my friends, my closest friends are still kind of my high school buddies. So a lot of my friends are still here.
Do you think that's going to kind of be the trend? Like, I mean, Rogan kind of started. I mean, I guess Nate Bargatze moved to Nashville years ago. That was the first one I heard of. But
Yeah.
Rogan kind of started this trend now that people are moving kind of all over the place because at least right now you don't need to be in the city for any reason.
Right, right. Well, what concerns me a little bit is that like the few times I've um been out in Cleveland doing comedy, which hasn't been too much, but like, some of the younger kids think that is the trend, but it's like, nah, I still think you got to go somewhere where you can get up. There
Every
like,
night.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, like it's one thing to move somewhere and then move back. It's another thing to just never move anywhere, because it's like you're just not going to get those chops. Going to New York, you're all of a sudden you're thrown in with, the best open micer from every city in the country. That's who's at that open mic. It's like it's like the Pro Bowl of open mics at the open mics you're going to, So all of a sudden your game gets stepped up. You're writing more. You're getting better faster and faster, and I just think that is so helpful. Although, I mean, there's guys like uh, Dusty Slay. I don't think he ever left. I think he's a Nashville guy. I don't think he ever left. Chad Daniels never
Right.
lived in New York or LA. Although Chad would come to New York a lot. So, and actually Chad was someone who I talked to for a while before moving here, because I was a little concerned leaving sort of one of the hubs of the industry, and Chad kind of convinced me that that doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah.
So
That'll be interesting to see. Is there anything that you want, because you mentioned being an analytical guy and um I know you. Based on your Twitter, I just know you have political thoughts. Not that you're a
yeah.
crazy political guy or anything, but is it being on a podcast like the Rad Dude Cast, and your comedy's a little more not necessarily like topical? Is it something? Do you try to stay away from all the shit going on right now, or is it something where you kind of wish you could vent about that stuff but don't really want to?
No, you know what it is I don't really find it funny. Like
Yeah.
and I think it's pretty clear to anyone who listens to me on a podcast or sees my act, I think it's probably pretty clear that I'm a liberal leaning guy. But
Mhm.
like, I, for me, um, I look, I could go up there and rant and divide rooms and shit, and I'm just not really drawn to that in my writing. But more than that, even is like I take much more joy in being in like you know the loony bin in Little Rock, Arkansas, where like half the room is probably Trump guys, and half the room are
Hate him. Yeah.
black folks, and who I'd assume maybe don't like Trump, or some of them do, some of them don't. And like I take much more joy in finding the subjects that can make both of those people laugh, and then they realize, like, yeah, there's more commonalities among humanity than there are differences. We all find this funny, or we all find that funny. Like, just because we disagree about these certain things, we can all laugh at a lot of the same things. I take a lot more pleasure in kind of in doing that. Now, it is getting to the point where I'm kind of like, man, I don't know, do I have a responsibility to like to speak up
You
for
don't.
what I believe in?
You
Yeah,
shouldn't anyway. Like
yeah,
I hate that comedy's kind of become that, where
yeah.
everyone's like, ah, I have this platform. It's like, hey,
Yeah.
not diminishing what you do. I love stand up, but it's like you're a joke teller. You're supposed to make people
Yeah,
laugh.
exactly.
You
Well,
know?
and the other thing is I'll get annoyed when, like, this was a thing about New York that would annoy me, where there's this like pressure to be to kind of like attack conservative, like pressure to tell like kind of liberally biased jokes. And those people would make me so mad, because I'd be like, you're a fucking dog walker. You're an open micer. You're a dog walker. You
Right.
can do that. Guess what? This is how I eat. You know what I mean? This is my job. So if when I go to these places, I got to come back next year. Like, so I can't afford to just go and have the club manager get mad at me because half the room fucking walked out. Like, this is
Right.
this is a career for me. Like, and I don't have a fan base. I'm not a draw, so I have to be good. Like, once I'm a draw, fine, great. Then I can say whatever the fuck I want. It doesn't matter. I'm going to sell tickets. But until then, like, I have to. And I'm not saying and I don't mean that I compromise my comedy. I tell the jokes I want to tell. It's just I don't find that shit funny, really.
Right.
It's not what my mind doesn't go to, like, let's make fun of Donald Trump. It's like, yeah, well,
Well, it's
why? I
so
don't
hard to
give a
do
shit.
too because he's such a wild character
Yeah,
that a lot
right.
of people just essentially like quote things he actually said and then are just like, "Can you believe this guy?"
Right, right.
And it's like,
Yeah.
"Well, you didn't write anything. There's
Right.
nothing you told me that I didn't just see
Yeah.
on the news."
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I don't. Yeah, I don't. It's not. I'm not really afraid of getting political. In my comedy life, I'm not interested in it. It
Yeah.
just doesn't. If somebody asked me to be on a political podcast, I would. I mean, I have no problem like being open with my thoughts. I'm a liberal guy, but I'm probably a little bit more towards the center than most kind of younger New York comics.
Yeah.
Like, in other words, I don't hate Joe Biden, but
Right.
but yeah, I just see it as sort of separate from comedy for me.
Yeah.
I
Well, I've gotten to the point, it's something I thought a lot about just because I've gotten to the point where I would talk about, I felt like I was supposed to talk about that stuff a lot. Like,
yeah,
well, if it's, and sometimes it's true where if you're doing a show that's somewhat topical, Trump's usually one of the biggest stories in the news. So it's kind of
right,
weird if you're like going out of your way to avoid it.
right,
But
right,
like the other day, I did a podcast where the first 10 or 15 minutes we talked about the shit at the Capitol building and all that, and I was just like, what do we do? I'm not knowledgeable enough to make any points that people haven't already heard 10 million times,
Right.
and I have more fun just goofing on stuff that's sillier than that,
Right.
And it leads to my thing too is that it just leads to like I remember once on the Kirk Minahan show, Kirk asked me like gun to my head who I would vote for, and I said I would vote Libertarian. He's like, no, if you had to pick, Biden or Trump, and I was like, I don't know. He's like, gun to your head, and I was like, I mean, I guess Trump, just because I think it would annoy people.
Yeah.
That led to people calling me like alt right,
Right.
like
Yeah.
Trump's, and it's like a small segment of people, but
Right.
it's still like, why am I dealing with that when I'm not a political guy at all? I don't give a shit about any of this.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Is
What
that a
was
thing that's bothered you? I noticed, I reached out to you on Twitter originally and then saw like you haven't tweeted in months. I was like, okay, he's not a big social media guy. Is
Yeah,
that something you've tried to stay away from,
I got
or are you
sick of
just
it,
never
man.
interested in it?
I got sick of it. And
Yeah.
honestly, um, what happened was I was basically on it for comedy reasons. And this kid who's really funny. I think he might be the permanent sidekick on Bargatze's podcast. He's at least on there all the
Oh,
time. This
what's his
kid,
name?
Aaron Weber.
Yep. Yeah, he's
Um,
on there.
yeah, and great guy. And we did shows in where were we? At Tulsa or somewhere. And he opened for me, and he goes, "Dude, you got to get on TikTok." He was like, "I'm telling you, so easy uh to get eyes on your comedy." And I ignored him. I was like, TikTok, that's for fucking teenage girls.
Right.
I don't understand. I don't want to get involved in a new social media platform. Come September, I'm getting sick of the lockdown. I'm bored. I start throwing up a couple clips on TikTok, and it just sort of blew up. And I was like, this is great because I can just people can see my comedy. I don't have to look at like really what I got sick of, Mike, was like uh, the infighting in comedy Twitter amongst
Yes.
comedians.
Yeah.
I got so sick of people telling other comedians what they should be doing or shouldn't be doing, or the latest fucking comedy gossip where I'm like, just who gives a shit? Everyone do their own career, do it how you want, fucking mind your own business. It was all so trivial and so annoying to me that I couldn't look at it anymore. And TikTok, I don't follow anyone. I follow just a bunch of hot girls that twerk. And
Right.
then the great thing is people don't have to follow you to see your shit. If it's good enough and it starts getting enough likes, just it gets thrown into people's feed.
Oh,
So
really?
so I
That's pretty
kind
cool.
of blew up on there, and I was like, fuck, I'm doing this, like I don't need the rest of that shit, like because I was never a good tweeter or Instagrammer really, because I didn't like it,
Yeah.
like I just it was like I liked it back when people were just throwing up one-liners on Twitter, not
Yeah.
when
Well, I was gonna say
everything.
the way you're describing TikTok is kind of how all social media starts,
Yeah,
where it's like a small group, and you're like, "Oh, this is fun," and
yeah,
then in 3 years, we're gonna be like, everyone's just angry on TikTok. I
yeah,
don't go on
yeah,
there anymore.
exactly. Yeah, well,
So it's a
that's the
miserable
thing.
thing that we all do, but it's weird, whether you're in podcasting or comedy or I think any kind of entertainment, really, the double edged sword is that in a way, you need it.
That's what I mean. I have often said, like, I would love to get to and I'm not in any way hungry, or I am hungry for it, but I'm not in any way chasing fame. If I can make my living telling jokes, if I can make a comfortable living for my family,
Yeah.
great. I'm happy. But the one beautiful thing would be if I could ever get famous enough to just fully get off social media.
Right.
I would love it, because I am in a career where it's necessary.
Yeah.
I have to be on it. And even just not being on Twitter and Instagram is not good. But I'm like, I still have my accounts. I'll throw something up every once in a
Yeah.
while.
And for right now, it's probably easier because you're not necessarily promoting dates
Right,
and stuff
right.
like that. But I mean, the vibe I have on your fan base and the Rad Dude Cast fans is that it's a pretty relaxed group. So do you even deal with a lot of shit on social media? I mean, there are cunts in every group, but
N-
but it
n-
seems like that's at least a pretty laid back
It,
environment that you guys have
it,
created.
yeah, interestingly, they're great, man. And I think it's just because of how silly the podcast is. It's such an absurd, like hard to follow podcast that like
Yes.
we get a really kind of laid back, goofy group of fans who just want to hear, the absurd stuff we do. And so our fans, man, I can't think of a single negative interaction. I mean, I'm sure we have negative reviews in some. I think I think there was like an totally understandable iTunes review that was like, "What the fuck did I just listen to?" And it's like, yeah, I get that. That's a reasonable it's a reasonable review. But all of our fans who kind of stick with us are all just easygoing. Like, we never have shit, and we don't really take on any, like, we're just there to have fun and do what's funny to us, and all three of us don't really have we're not really that interested in I mean, I am interested in politics, like, in my life. I'm just not interested in it as a comedy subject. I don't
Yeah.
It's not funny to me. It's just kind of like, I don't
It's
know,
exhausting.
yeah, I just feel like the fucking lobbyists controlled the government. It's shitty. Money, money controls the Democrats and the Republicans, and nobody cares about us. End of
Yeah.
story. What's funny? You know?
Let's pull a few laughs out of that, huh, folks?
Yeah, yeah,
Do you guys do you guys and I don't mean this in an insulting way, but since I did a podcast with all three of you, I didn't have to do anything. Like I didn't ask any questions. You guys
yeah.
just came in and just kind of started talking,
Right.
which I thought was awesome. But do you guys like prepare? Do you go in with an idea of like what you're going to talk about?
Depends. Sometimes, and sometimes not. I mean, we're all prepared to just start a podcast at any given time,
Yeah,
with no subject. Particularly, I think that is driven by Greg and Anthony have such a long-standing comedic chemistry, that goes back to high school.
yeah,
But yeah, we'll do themed episodes where we talk about it beforehand. We want to do these characters. We want to, or I'll say I have a quiz planned for you guys, stuff like
right.
that. But yeah, I mean, I'd say it's about 60% unplanned, 40% planned. And usually we'll talk for a few minutes beforehand every time. Like, hey man, do you have anything you want to talk about? Like, do you want to talk about something? We'll do that. But
Yeah. It's
not
funny because it's a podcast that a lot of people ask me about this shit because I just kind of I review comedy and podcasts and I'm
yeah,
obviously very interested in it and all that. And so the Rad Dude Cast is one I always recommend. And I'm like, there are times where I'm like, but don't start with the last episode because it's not going to make any
yeah,
any
yeah,
possible
yeah.
sense to you. You
Right,
know what I mean?
right. Well, Mike Suarez, our new producer, has been really good about kind of trying to help us. He's good about being like, okay, there needs to be a little something up front, like explaining things just a tad, like,
I've noticed you've added that where there's
yeah,
like kind of an intro now.
yeah, yeah. He's kind of like, look, you need, because you're gonna get, as you grow, you're gonna get people, and you need to kind of give them a little framework, like and it's not that we've not wanted to do that, just none of us really cared, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
None of us have the marketing bone in our
Right.
body, So we've always just been like, we're gonna do what we're gonna have a good time. As long as we're having a good time, hopefully the listeners will. And that has led to some episodes that are like priceless and some that are fucking unlistenable, So but the podcast does pretty well, and I don't know. Yeah, check out the Rad Dude Cast if you want. You might like it, you might hate it. Hard to
It's
say.
honestly one of my favorites, and it's
Yeah.
also the perfect podcast if you can ever find anyone to do it, to be animated, I think would be an awesome thing to just throw up on YouTube or whatever. Because the shit that you guys do, if there was a sort of a visual element added to it, it would be hilarious. I'm not that it's not already hilarious, but
No, we've played around with that idea. Yeah, it's just animation
it's tough, right?
turns out to be more expensive than I
Yeah.
thought. Yeah, but yeah, there's stuff like that in the works. There's some we're working on some stuff.
That's what I'm becoming, just one of those guys that I'm like, why you just put yourselves on HBO. I don't
Yeah,
see why you don't
yeah,
just do
yeah,
that.
yeah. That's the best. I love that. Like, you get that so much when you're just out
Just get a
on the
Netflix
road.
special, Brendan. I
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
understand.
When you're out on the road, why aren't you on Netflix? And it's like, oh, okay, because I don't want to be. That's why.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Like that. As I've kind of got this success on TikTok, so many of these fucking comments are, "Why don't you have a Netflix special? You should do that." And it's
Yeah.
like, yeah, call them then. Like thank.
Give him a call.
Yeah.
Um, so the Rad Dude Cast, obviously, iTunes, YouTube, everywhere else you get podcasts, wherever you're listening to this right now, even on Patreon. The Rad Dude Cast, and for subscribers, you guys do what, 4 shows a week now?
That's changing soon. We're reformatting the Patreon to add some bonuses. We've kind of got some feedback that people are having a hard time keeping up with 4 episodes a week, so we're offering some different type of bonuses at every level. But yeah, patreon.com/raddudecast. And then I also do, if anyone out there likes crosswords or likes the great Greg Warren, me and Greg Warren do the New York Times crossword puzzle every day, and then talk about how shitty we are at it once a week on One Down, the One Down podcast, which is available wherever you get podcasts too.
I was actually listening to that before he came on. Another very good podcast that I'm a fan of. Check out Brendan Eyre. It's funny. It's funny you said that about Patreon though. Before you go, because I did get that criticism. So I guess I'm curious your thoughts on it now that you mention it. But I've been putting up shit every day in some form,
Right.
and a lot of it's different subjects. And like, someone was like, "Hey man, you're just throwing shit up at random times. Like it's kind of hard to follow." Is that what you guys got? Because I was at first I was like, fuck them. Like I'm throwing up content. You can follow it as you want. But have you
Yeah,
guys found it's a little difficult too?
yeah, I don't. I mean, I don't want to because we haven't announced it on the podcast yet, so I don't want to get it too much into how we're changing it. But basically, the feedback we've been getting is like, I love this, but I'm feeling like I'm being left behind because I cannot listen to this many episodes.
Right.
And so we're taking that into account and kind of adjusting, and that works out good both ways because the 4 episodes a week was really just meant as a quarantine type thing because none of us were doing anything.
Yeah.
And now we're going to be, hopefully soon back all out on the road, and that will become more difficult to do with travel and all that shit.
Yeah.
So,
all right. Air Bud on Twitter, Instagram. Is that your TikTok handle too?
no, real Brendan Eyre, EYRE on TikTok. Yeah. Yeah.
All
Follow
right.
me
So
on
follow
TikTok.
Brendan everywhere. Check him out. Hilarious guy. Rad Dude Cast is awesome. Check out One Down as well. And Brendan, thanks so much for coming on, man. I appreciate it.
I really appreciate you having me, man, and I really appreciate you sharing kind of some of your struggles because I just think you're a great guy, and I think it's important to talk about it, and I think you're gonna get through it and be good, man, and I just hope you can take in some of the value other people see in you,
Well,
because
thank you, buddy.
I've only met you a couple times, and I think you're fucking great. So.
Thank you so much, man. And I appreciate you coming on and telling your story and everything. And hopefully you can make it out to Boston soon.
Yeah, I hope so. My lady's from Maine, but she lived in Boston for a long time. So
Oh, I meant to tell you. Do you have 5 more minutes?
yeah, I got unlimited time, unless she goes
I
into
I heard
labor.
you talking about that on the podcast. That up in northern Maine, like the tip of the country, you want
Yeah,
to buy some property up there. Look into Madawaska. we
Madawaska.
did we did. So Kirk Minahan wanted to see if his audience would travel to the most remote place possible.
Yeah,
So we found Madawaska. Kirk got a key to the town, and we did a live show up there for like 150 people, whatever
oh,
it
that's
was.
awesome.
People drove through the snow, and it's like there's nothing up there, but they have their own little community. Like there's, you know, the one pizza place, the one restaurant,
Yeah.
and it's if you're just looking for peace, it's kind of
Yeah.
nice up there.
That's awesome. I don't
Miserable weather, but
Yeah. I don't know how I do with like I don't cuz like okay, what Mike's referencing is I was like looking cuz someday I'd love to own a cabin in Maine like on a lake and cuz that's where my girlfriend's from, that's where her family is, but I was kind of just like looking at those type of things and but I also happened to notice you can also buy like tiny pieces of property in like the way up north boonies of Maine for like $3,000. You can
yeah,
just get like 2 acres, and I was like, maybe I should just buy some land just in case.
you never know
But
when shit
but
hits
I
the fan.
but I do kind of think like being like a bit of my mental health stuff has to do with like a bit of my anxiety is sort of hypochondriac related. I won't get too into it, but like I do think I would get a little worried being like a plane flight from a fucking hospital.
Right.
Like I don't know if I'm quite cut out for that life, but we'll see. I
Well, if
did.
you
I
ever
mean, I worked in a salmon canning factory in Alaska, and that was a tiny ass little village. So
in Alaska,
yeah,
did you live out there?
when I was in my 20s, maybe 19, maybe for a summer, I worked in a salmon canning factory.
Oh wow, that's an interesting experience. It sounds like.
Yeah, it was a crazy experience. We could talk about it another time, but it was wild. It's
All
still
right.
there's no time there's no time to get into that because it's an hour's worth of fucking craziness that place.
Well, stay tuned, folks. Next time Brendan is on, we
Yeah,
will get into the salmon canning factory.
yeah.
And until then, check out the Rad Dude Cast one down and find Brendan on social media, Airbud or Real Brendan Eyre. Thank you so much, buddy.
Thanks, Mike.
All right, man.